Alan, a touch just on the A game on Friday night. As you mentioned, for development, it's great to have it back, and it should be interesting against this New Zealand sort of select side.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and I think what's really interesting is the Irish coaches they've been double jobbing this week because they've been running two teams. Matt Williams was my old A coach back in the day, and it was always kind of separate, the national coaches and the A coaches, completely separate, this is kind of a once-off unique thing before, and a little bit surprised, but I think it's great that the A guys have the Irish national coaches running their team for the week as well. It adds a lot to their workload, and Matt knows that as a coach. You're trying to run two different teams. But to have Paul O'Connell, Andy Farrell, Simon Easterby, these guys, Mike Catt, all week in that dressing room Friday night, preparing them. And they had him on tour, obviously, in New Zealand for the Maori games. The first Maori game was, I think they were a bit shell-shocked. They didn't get themselves going. The second game was a great game in Wellington, the week of the third test. And I think you could see that bit of bond and togetherness. And the whole idea was to try and build on this and get that depth for the World Cup next year. Someone like Ryan Baird, Gavin Coombs, Joe McCarthy, these guys, Jeremy Lockman, I think he's shown a possibility of getting in the mix there, and he's shown some real improvements working with the national coaches as well. Tom O'Toole, Cian Prendergast, big athletic guy. So they'll be really hoping for a performance Friday night. I think you're going to get a lot of X-factor players in that New Zealand side, a lot of really good players. And they'll be pretty determined. But you think it's a win-win situation. Nick Timoney, what he can do as well. Jack Crowley, we've been talking about this out half spot for a number of years. So there's loads of guys you could name there. Marty Moore had a great game for Munster last week. So I think this is a great opportunity. Obviously, they want to try and get a performance and get a win, and hopefully it kicks off the weekend really positively for them. But Munster are probably the team that were hit hardest with the Emerging Ireland tour, but I think that was a really beneficial situation for Ireland. And we've always said, we probably said after the last World Cup, what can we do a little bit different? What do we need to look at? Do we need to look at the overseas players and start selecting them? Do we? And I think this is new stuff, and it's stuff that hopefully next year we'll be looking back saying it was really beneficial to this Irish side. And who knows, they may get more games in the new year. There might be more fixtures, but it's hard to juggle it all. But I think this unique situation, it could be very, very beneficial for the players and the team.
Matt, just quickly, your take as a former Ireland A coach?
Well, it's interesting, Stu. If you look around the world, Australia have just played A games against Japan. South Africa are playing, obviously, against Munster and Bristol. And New Zealand and Ireland have obviously engaged in huge these last two series. Look, it's stating the obvious, but the international game is just different to club, and it takes players time to adjust. The problem with scrapping the A games as they did probably a decade ago was that players came into international rugby under huge pressure, and the coaches were reluctant to give them opportunities, and if they failed, they were kicked out. What the A games do is they give staff and players opportunity to learn to know each other, work in a different environment, and it's a safety net. As Quinny said, the first test in New Zealand, the A guys didn't perform. It was a different environment. They were caught out. The next week, okay, we figure out what this is. They do perform. That is a great example of what the A games do. It puts a safety net under developing player performance. And I don't think they should ever have got rid of it. And B, if you look back on the development of players who've come through A systems, including Alan and so many other guys that came through those systems, as a support for the national side, I just think it's an absolute must in any national program.